Me busy enough. The weather's so good we don't stop. 7 days a week.
This is more, I wouldn't call it Texas sales manager, but it's
7 to midnight, we're in there every day. I'm getting tired.
Well, it's supposed to rain Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so I'll slow you down a little bit.
It's supposed to rain this weekend?
Yeah, it's like a 30-40% chance. So
Then there's cattle barns to clean and this to fix and that to fix.
I know, and you know, it always amazes me thinking back growing up on a farm. It's days that I was out late and stuff. We always had to grind extra feed, clean a pen. It's like it's funny how my dad planned some of that stuff out if I was out till like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Now it's my son that does the planning.
Interview.
We're shit, taking orders from him.
Which one it was.
Well, that ain't bad. I don't mind that.
One of the ones.
It's frustrating with me when I don't understand it. Technology.
169. Well, they narrowed it down to 169 for the interview. 30.
Morgan, yeah. Right up on the.
Do you want this pulled out?
why she don't want to go there is because she gets a guaranteed interview.
I had to pay for the swing club one day.
Get our time.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Look at your phone.
Well, my computer says it's time to go. We on?
Put that one back in.
That's what we go by.
Okay,
Battery's bad.
we will call to order the regular meeting for the Tracy City Council for September 27th. We'll stand and do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nobody wants to bless us anymore.
Bless you.
So we will go on to the approval of the agenda. Do we have anything to?
No, Mayor. Everything on the agenda's good to go.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's too early to do our public hearings. Did you want to move on to the consent calendar?
Sure. Make a motion to approve the September 13th and 15th minutes, the approval of municipal accounts payable and payroll without breakthrough beverage, approval of municipal accounts receivable, to set truth and taxation date for December 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m., approve the park board minutes for the 13th and 19th of August, approve the comprehensive plan minutes for June 9th, and approve the community center work group minutes for August 12th.
I'll second that.
First and second, any discussion?
I have just a couple of questions on the municipal accounts payable. Is the $750 payment to New History, is that the final payment in their phase one?
Not quite. We got the final payment today for $750. I know that odd that it's the same number, but it is. Yes, that's the second to last payment. We came in actually under budget on that project. We got a $15,000 grant. I think New History's cost was something like $14,500. And we had about $1,000 of in-kind staff work on it, and so with the in-kind staff work, it's basically going to cost us no cash out of pocket.
Okay, good. And I was just curious, there are two items for Red Rock Quarry. Does that have anything to do with the red rocks that
yes,
were all
that's
there?
why our streets are red.
That was actually.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm wrong about that. Okay. Come on up, Shane.
You're not wrong. But in this case, that was paid for through Pearson Brothers as part of their contract. But the Red Rock Quarry was for the riprap for the ditch out at Swift Lake. There's two actually waterways there that we did erosion control on. So if you,
okay, and is it the riprap underneath that new bridge?
the bridge, and then down further, there's that other waterway that all the storm water goes through.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious, yeah.
So there's that, and then our For the seal coating rock, that also came from Red Rock Quarry, but it was under a different contract.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Jones,
Aye.
Teigs,
Aye.
Towle,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Landine,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve accounts payable to Breakthrough Beverage.
I'll second that.
Have first and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Towle,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Landine,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. Anybody have anything for mayor, council communication?
I just want to say that the new park committee met again, and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of discussion, and you'll be hearing more from that group in the future.
It's great to have people so excited about helping the parks.
Absolutely.
Tell them all thank you. Okay, do you want to, should move on to staff reports then? Val, do you want to go?
I just have one thing to add for you, and that is I got contacted by the SMSU theater department today, and they have a play coming up this fall. And in order to promote it, they want to go around to libraries and do a story time and have the kids do a craft, and then the crafts will be displayed at the performances. So that will be October 16th, which is a Saturday at 10:30.
What's the play gonna be?
Pinkalicious, which if you have any little kids you're around in your life, you may know of that.
I
But
don't, so what is it?
it's just a story about a little girl and her brother.
Okay.
Yeah. Or it's a series of books, actually. There's a bunch of them.
Well,
So.
that's a fun event.
Yeah, so I jumped right on that. That sounds like a great time. So other than that, I don't have anything else for you.
Okay.
Val, I noted you had quite an increase in circulation.
Yeah.
Anything that attribute that to in particular?
You know, we have a lot of really good homeschooling families who, you know, they don't really let up in the summer much at all. And they really keep us on our toes with getting materials in for them, which is wonderful. We really appreciate them. But we've had a lot of people in, so especially kids.
Good.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything for Val? Thanks, Val. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Jason?
I don't have anything to add, but I'll entertain any questions you have.
Chief, I noted that, or I was glad to see that the category of detox center was low in comparison to getting, helping people get their locked keys out of their vehicles and so forth. But I was wondering, does that mean when you have to take someone to a detox center, is that what that kind of category is? In your police report, yeah, it says detox. Is that you have to take? Is that a category you have to take someone to detox?
Yes. Yeah, either that or we, not necessarily we take them, or we'll assist getting them, because like both Woodstock and Granite have like volunteers that will come and pick them up and counsel them basically on the way there versus us transporting them there. So we try to utilize that service.
So you don't necessarily have to have an officer leave town to take the individual to the
Exactly. And it could just be an intoxicated person underneath that category that we deal with, say, passed out in a yard, or somebody that's, not welcome where they were staying type thing because of their abundance of consumption.
Okay.
So we may, underneath that category, might just be helping somebody find a friend that's going to take responsibility for them until they sober up.
Okay. And also, I was just wondering how you're coming with the enforcement on the nuisance ordinances, that new approach that we're taking, is that showing any more signs of success?
We haven't implemented it yet, council member. We actually could not get on the list to get the new software in place until October, and that's October 22nd. It's October 22nd, and we had a bunch of other things that were going on, and so since we couldn't get that done, we haven't specifically implemented that yet. So, my apologies for that. It's actually a goal of mine, in the next year to focus more on kind of the beautification goal, because that was added in March and we haven't done as much as we probably should on that, but that has not been implemented yet.
Okay, so still in the planning stage.
Still in the planning stages, that's correct.
So is there a list or something for residents if they want to report a potential offense or whatever, that they would know what goes to you versus what would go to Shane? Because I think there's still confusion, because we've kind of grouped them together a lot, where now we're trying to be a little bit more separated.
Well, anybody can bring a complaint to me and I'll make sure it goes to the right people.
Okay, so they should still all come to you?
I sure can.
Our preference in the long term, council member, is to have one point of contact. In all likelihood, we'll identify that probably as the office, and I'll be candid with you. My intent is to move to a direction of having one point of contact for a lot of city services, because what you're describing happens not just with this issue, but a lot of others. Well, who do I talk to about that? How do I get a building permit? Where do I go? We want to try to direct them to one location, unless it's an emergency, of course, dial 911, but any kind of other government service that's not an emergency, we want to try to direct them to the office as much as possible. A lot of cities have like a 411 system, which we don't have, but it helps because people oftentimes don't know. And so in the end, I really think you'll end up seeing this building code issue and the nuisance violations blended into one contact, but we haven't worked our way through this yet to figure all this out. That's kind of how they do it in Pipestone in reality. You've got the chief building official over there, Doug, who basically handles all of those things. And that's kind of the model we're trying to move towards, but we're not there yet. But until then, you could certainly call the chief, or you could call Shane, or you could call our office, and they can figure out who the right person is. But I think that's the right approach in the future.
Because people don't even know if it's a break of an ordinance to have, say, a camper in someone's front yard, that's got the slide outs out there, hooked up to electricity, and it's right there in the front yard. Is that kosher by ordinance?
That's a good question. There's probably a lot of education that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think people understand I don't know what the term is, when there's a lot of stuff in the yard, as far as cleanliness or orderliness, I think people kind of understand that's against an ordinance, old cars without license plates, stuff like that. But then when it comes to people's homes, if a house needs, some repair or potentially, painting and all that, how far do we go into that as far as it being a property owner's right to have disrepair or whatever, and us saying you need to keep your house up?
That's a really good question in general. That's really a service level question, which is a question for you as a city council. Shane and I are having some conversations about structures in particular. When does it get bad enough that it's a code violation, and sometimes it's a judgment call. One of the things that we had talked about doing is bringing to you kind of similar things that you saw on the streets, like you have conditions of streets. If it's alligator, it needs this much maintenance. If it's this, it needs this much maintenance, and that's kind of a service level. I mean, how good do you want the streets to be? Buildings are kind of the same thing. And so what we've discussed, but like I said, this is something that We just have it put to the front burner because of all the other things that we've been working on. What we've discussed is bringing it back to you with some pictures and say, okay, well, is this acceptable or is this acceptable? Is this okay? Is this not okay? In all likelihood, that's something that'll probably happen in the spring, just so you know. But I think that's a judgment call on your behalf, on the city council, as to what you would like to see enforced. Because it is always the balance between, well, it's my right to have my property a certain way, but, you know, if it gets so bad that it's hurting everybody else in the neighborhood too, because it looks bad and it's hurting their property values and their quality of life, well then, but where's that line? It's different for every community, and we probably need to talk about where that line is.
I got a call from a citizen that was complaining about people having their dumpsters out at the curb for a week long.
Yep.
Is there anything against that, or, I mean, what can we do about that?
There are other communities that I have been in have had rules like that says you need to pull them off the curb. I don't remember, Shane, we don't have that in our ordinance. We don't currently have that in there. That would be probably in the utility section. Shane and I have actually been kind of going through section 6 of the code, which is the utility section. And if you're interested in that, we could certainly put a requirement then that they take them back by a certain time of day or something like that, so they're not sitting out on the curb.
I don't know that. I was approached and they were frustrated that they're always sitting out there and the garbage blows on their lawn, and they're people that just moved to town not too long ago and they don't think it's right. But they didn't know what to do about it, so they come to me.
Well, you are the complaint department. That's what council's for.
Well,
for sure.
Then we want to know where to take it.
Yeah, well, you can always take it to me, at the end of the day, and we can figure out where to go with it. But those are really good points. I mean, there are other communities that I have lived in that you have to put your garbage cans away. In some cases, even around the side of the house. You can't even put them on the front of your house by a certain time, or it's a code violation. And I'm getting the red light that says we're supposed to start the public hearing right now. So stop talking.
We can come back to this. Jason, you don't have to stay for the next part of that.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
All right.
So we will go to the first public hearing for 6:45. Do you want to see what that is? Or?
Sure, I can tell you just briefly what this is. We talked about this before, but basically, this is the repeal of Ordinance 227. We had established an infrastructure replacement reserve fund at one point. We stopped using it years ago. We can't figure out where, and it basically requires us to have one, and we don't. And so, since we don't have it, and we're using the capital fund in the same way, this basically just cleans it up. One of those things where it's a good idea to not have requirements you don't intend to follow, if that makes sense. That's where we're kind of what this is. But it doesn't affect us at all. It's just a cleanup item.
Well, was seeing anybody from the public like to talk about that? And not seeing any, do we just move on to...
Just got to vote on it. Close the public hearing and then vote.
Okay. We will close the public hearing. Do we need to...
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution as stated.
Council members, an ordinance, actually. Ordinance 376, not a resolution.
Yes, Dan Franklin, I make a motion to approve that resolution.
No,
Ordinance number 376, and to repeal ordinance 227.
I'll second that.
First and second, any further discussion?
I think it makes sense.
Are you okay with that, Seth?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think it makes sense.
Okay. So, roll call, please.
Lyman,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Teagues,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Towle,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. And then we'll go back to the department heads. Shane, do you want to go?
Well, I guess I would like to have Eric finish that on this dumpster thing. Hopefully this
sorry.
person is listening and hears
Yeah, sure.
the answer.
Sure.
We have nothing.
We have no law against it.
So basically, they just have to put up with it then, is what we're saying.
Well, we don't have to put up with it.
No,
We
they
could-
have, the neighbors have to put up with it
For right
until,
now.
for now.
For now, unless we pass, unless we change the code to require them to take it away, yeah.
And I'm not saying we need to, but say we change the code and say that they have to have them off, who's gonna enforce that?
Well, that's a
Have
really good
complaint-
question.
Have a complaint before they enforce it, or if they driving around town, they see it, do they take care of it, or?
I'm gonna be honest, we really struggle with enforcing a lot of the codes we have right now on the books.
Right.
Because of, resource-related issues. And so it's a good point, if it's a few people and it's not a big problem, maybe it doesn't, passing a law doesn't always fix the problem, right? So it may not. I couldn't tell you. I do think that it is a question of how much resources you want to put on these issues related to enforcing city codes. Not just building codes and nuisance codes, but zoning violations too. I was looking at some things the other day, and we have some uses in some zones that are technically not allowed, but at one point they just kind of happened, and so, but we just, we don't enforce it. Nothing egregious or anything like that. I'm not saying that there's a big problem, but it's common that we have things on the books that we just don't have the manpower to enforce, and that's a question of how much manpower you want to put into it. And it's always a question of choices. You could do this or you could do that. Do you want to put that much effort into it? I promise you we will bring back that discussion to you at some point, but I think it's worth a discussion, because we can do all the code enforcement in the world, but it does require, it's going to require more effort, and that means something else has got to give, or we have to figure out a way to spend more money.
Well, I don't mean to say that they're not doing anything, but the police are always driving around.
Right.
All they need to do is make a note of that so that somebody can handle it.
Either
you handle it or Diane or whoever, I don't know, but they're always driving around, so.
Let me make a comment about that, because I think that's an important point, because the way we have treated nuisance codes and other codes in the past has been, it's more like you do it once in the spring and then you stop. If you want an effective nuisance code as well as building code enforcement program, you have to have a program all year long, regular enforcement, not kind of sporadic, which is the way we do it. Now, in part, we do that because of resources, right? We don't have unlimited resources. We don't have somebody dedicated just to do that. Like Pipestone, for example, has somebody dedicated just to do that. So what Shane and I have talked about is dedicating one person to do these kinds of things, so it's kind of an all-year program. That's how it's successful in other places. You have to be dedicated to on a continuous basis, because you're exactly right. We don't do it that way, but we could. We're going to have to change the way we do business.
There's no use to have another ordinance if you're not going to follow it.
In my opinion, it's not so much about what the laws on the books are, but our enforcement of them. We haven't brought this back to you yet, but the Citizen Committee for the Comprehensive Plan, met and kind of reviewed some of the survey information, and the number one concern that people have in this community is how the buildings in town look, and I presume they mean, we didn't ask them if it was commercial buildings or residential, but I presume it's all of it. And so the second one was the conditions of the streets, and we've done quite a bit of work, on that. So I think that the citizens are concerned about it. It would make sense to put more effort into it. We just are going to have the discussion about what that means and how much, and things like that. We're on it. It's just it's going to take a little while to get there.
I think we can also look at it as maybe a phased approach.
Yeah.
That maybe the first thing we need to do is set what our expectation is and
Yep.
just educate the public.
Yep.
You know, because there's probably people that would bring their garbage containers up within whatever time frame if they
Yep.
knew that was the expectation.
Right.
But there isn't really an expectation out there for people to try to be compliant on their own. So maybe the first thing we need to do is just general courtesy and to make the city to look nice, because that is all of our goals, I hope, of people that live in this town, is to pull the garbage containers up by the evening of when it's been dropped off. I mean, we have to give people time because they work, they're out of town, you know, working, whatever. But to try to give them 24 hours from when it's picked up or something.
And then garbage day comes on, say, Tuesday, and they're out of town till Thursday, then how do they get them back, you know, so.
But I think
You keep
more-
having
In that
trouble,
case,
I
you
guess.
wouldn't think you could have a neighbor, but like
Yeah.
this particular instance, I mean, it's been there like all year.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Box Fair Day weekend, I almost went over there and put them off the street.
They just kind of store them out there, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
sad because
With
it's like.
snow removal coming up, they're gonna end up not sitting there because I would think the plows will end up.
We'll move them.
You'll move them.
Well,
But I think
it's
right
sad
now, if we
because-
just ask, you know, maybe if people watching the
Sure.
TV, if there's something in the paper.
We
or
can put out a
whatever.
public notice about putting cans and, you know, we'll do that. We will absolutely do
Especially
that.
in preparation for winter and snow removal.
Can
Maybe it's a
somebody-
good timing.
Can somebody just do a courtesy knock on their door and let them know that it'd be just nicely neighborly of that?
I think,
They would-
I think neighbors could do that too, you know, I mean, if the neighbors are concerned, I would go knock on their door.
well, you know, I asked this person,
And it
but he
doesn't
said,
work?
oh, I just moved to town, so I don't wanna be a jerk, but
What the heck?
now he's making me one.
Now he's making you, that's right.
So I don't know, I guess my wife always tells me I'm not very.
I'm not sure what we would say under those circumstances, Mayor, you know, because there's no law against it, and so someone might, you know, say, well, you know,
No, it's just kind of sad. It's just nicely neighborly of
you
them.
should put, yeah.
Let's put out a notice.
We can do that. We can put the word out and say, you know, we'd like, you know, to bring your cans up, that we think that's a nice thing to do. But I really think, and you know, we need to step up our efforts on a lot of this beautification stuff in reality, because you know, it's going to make a difference in terms of people wanting to stay here, coming to town, visiting town. Although I am going to say that you know, Diane told me a story earlier today, actually, about her sister coming to town, talking about how she really thought that the town was looking, you know, much better than the last time. And I imagine a lot of that has to do with the streets. So, you know, we have some issues, but we got to keep working it. We got to keep working it, and we will. And, you know, I really appreciate that, you know, the work the money that you put into the streets and the dedication to that, you know, as a city council, and saying, hey, this is important and we want to address it. And I hear what you're saying about these other things, and we're going to do that too. You know, it's something that it takes time. It's going to take some time.
Well, I think it's worth doing something, because if we ignore it,
I got to get any better.
It's just a black eye on the whole community. And I would also add, when the city of Tracy went to curbside garbage pickup a number of years ago, that was one of the council's discussions points back then, concerned about what it looks like having garbage cans in the street. And everyone agreed that it was very important that citizens remove their garbage cans at the end of the day and pull them back, not leave them in the street or on the curb. So, that goes way back when.
Well, maybe it just needs to be a reminder.
Yeah.
Yep.
And an education, because a lot of new people have moved to town.
Absolutely. We got that down. We'll get it done by tomorrow.
Shane, can you talk like in 2 minutes?
Well, yeah, he loved that.
Depends how much you talk.
All right, hopefully everybody read my report. There's a few things in it anyway, but I'll hit some highlights here. The parks, earlier this year we had discussion on, some repairs and on various different parks in town. We have some fencing for Sebastian Park we just picked up. Locate's called in on that. We're just waiting for the go-ahead and replace some posts and put a gate and fix some fencing around both ball fields. Janelle's been painting benches around town in the parks. There's a few boards we'll have to replace where she needs to do the rest of them in Sebastian, but I know Eric's going to talk on the shelter later here for Central Park in his report, but we're back to weekly mowing. A little tough with only one part-timer, but all the grass decides to grow. We've been hauling away debris off the snow field, getting ready for winter, just some stuff that was dumped from water mains and whatnot throughout the year. We did start spraying today. They're starting at the cemetery. They're going to work in through the parks and stuff for weeds. Then we had a short meeting today with farmers on the pond decommissioning project to keep that moving forward. Hopefully we can get that in the bid process soon. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
Yeah, does have anything for anybody else have anything for Shane? Okay, with that we'll go on to the second public hearing. Do you want to say this?
Can you open the public hearing?
Oh, did I? Sorry.
You just said go
Yeah,
on.
we will open the public hearing.
Sorry. I know Diane's going to get mad at me if we don't say the right things. This is also fairly straightforward, Mayor. We had this really complicated cemetery system with multiple funds, some for operating, some for capital, long-term improvements, etc. We really simplified the funds, as you remember, at the end of the year to bring it down to one. So this brings us back to where we are today, which is we have one perpetual care fund, which and it's very clear that all of the money associated with cemetery stays in the cemetery fund. All the revenues go in the cemetery fund. We can't raid the cemetery fund for other things, even though there's like a couple $100,000 in there. And that if you need to, you can put money into it from some other source if we run out. But ultimately, it identifies that and restricts that money just for the cemetery and simplifies it just so it's one fund. So any long-term capital improvements or our continuing operations and maintenance, mowing and repairs and things like that, will continue to go into the fund. So this just cleans it up and simplifies where we're at with the cemetery operations and fund.
So are there any regulations as to what can be used from a perpetual fund versus?
No, there aren't any specific regulations except how you have identified it. And so when we set it up as a perpetual fund, it can only be spent on cemetery-related expenses.
Anything cemetery.
Anything cemetery-related. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's cemetery-related. So we couldn't take money out, for the streets, for example. So like on the sewer fund, we took money out for the streets, for the sewer fund. Well, you can do that because it's not restricted, but this is restricted just for cemetery. And a perpetual care fund, it's not a legal issue, but there's a government accounting standard that basically governs how you handle a perpetual fund. So this is that specific kind of fund, and we'll follow those accounting standards for this fund. But generally, it's how it's restricted in here, which I'll just read. It says, all income from its cemetery lot sales, donations, or gifts shall be placed into this fund and dedicated to the care, maintenance, and improvement of the cemetery. No funds may be transferred out of the fund to the general fund or any other fund of the city. And so it's only cemetery. All the money from the cemetery funds go into this, can only be spent on cemetery purposes.
This last year, has the general fund had to subsidize the perpetual care fund?
Not this last year, no. In 2021, no. In fact, I think we're actually going to make a little money on the cemetery fund this year. I should say the fund will go up. But in the past, yeah, that's what's happened is that we had these kind of automatic transfers from the general fund into the cemetery fund, so it just kept growing and growing and growing. And we don't really need to do that because it's somewhat self-sustaining at the moment. And so it doesn't make any sense to take money and put more money into the cemetery fund if it can already handle what it's doing right now.
So was that kind of an administrative oversight then in the past, putting money from the general fund?
You know, my personal impression, I wasn't here when the previous budgets were built, but in looking at the way that we had built our budgets in the past, we had all these automatic transfers that went between funds. And so every year we just added a little bit extra to that transfer like we did a line items. Well, here's an extra 3%, here's an extra 5%, and we just kept kind of doing the same thing. We have limited the transfers now. We only have 6 budgeted this year. We're only going to have 5, you'll hear later tonight, for next year, because conceptually we want the funds to be able to support themselves, right? The water fund revenue should stay in the water fund. We shouldn't be taking money out of that. We shouldn't be taking money out of the general fund and putting it in the water fund. The water fees should support the water fund, you know, as an example. And so it's a bit of a philosophical change, but it's really a best practice in budgeting and fund accounting to do it the way we're doing it now.
Okay, since we have nobody from the public that would like to talk about this, we will close the public hearing and we will vote on that.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 377, amending ordinance 189 regarding the cemetery.
Second it.
First and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Tom.
Aye.
Landay.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Jones.
Aye.
Teeks.
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. Before we, Shane, I just had a citizen ask me about, is there any scheduled mosquito spraying for the rest of this year?
Generally after the Labor Day weekend, we kind of consider the mosquitoes done, but now that it's warming up and we got a little moisture, they're coming out. I don't know when it's going to get cold again. I know it's supposed to cool off later this week after, I think, Thursday's rain, but we certainly can if it's something that council would like to do, but
Personally, I think just leave it go. I don't see any need. I mean, it's the end of September.
I know I got bit by a couple last week, but most of them are those little gnats when they started the bean harvest. Those are coming out. That's what it's been biting more than anything in the last week, but as far as mosquitoes go, there's been a few, but they're
I agree. We're going into October. I don't think we need to be spraying for...
generally isn't a big deal this time of the year, but it is an option yet. It's not.
I'd put the sprayer away.
What's that?
I'd put the sprayer away.
Yeah, get it winterized.
Okay, thanks, Shane.
Yep.
Last but not least.
Well, second to that.
Oh, yeah.
So I will just hit a couple highlights from my monthly review. We did not have any customers that were shut off for delinquent balances on utility accounts on September 5th. Again, just an awesome job by Krista keeping on top of customers' accounts and working with setting up payment plans or offering UCAP assistance or getting customers to actually come in and pay. We should be receiving payments from UCAP hopefully this week. We were told last week that they have started cutting checks on applications, so we should be receiving some of those funds shortly. Since Tam is not here this evening, the liquor store had another good month in August. Still 4%, sales are still 4% above where they were year-to-date last year. And her cash flow is ahead of where she needs to be year-to-date for 2021. She's doing an awesome job there still. And then the only other note I have is we have started scheduling interviews for the accounting clerk position later this week. So we hope to have that filled shortly.
Have you had a good turnout for people applying?
Yeah, we had about 14 applicants. So, yeah. Good pool to choose from.
See, Krista, on the Swift Lake Park camping revenues, are we to the point where you think it would be economically feasible to add a few more campsites out there? Would the extra revenues pay for the cost of developing those sites? Has anyone ever talked about that?
No, but I can look into it.
Are they full?
And how often, has the park been full?
You know, we don't track site usage on our end. We just record the revenue, so.
I can touch on that. So it's really right now, the only time the parks have been full is like Memorial Weekend. 4th of July sometimes is full. Otherwise, Labor Day, it's usually over full. I'd say that's, so I mean, adding sites may or may not help, but I mean, throughout the year, for the most part, there's vacancies right now, if that answers your question.
How much, I suppose, it's hard to know how much it would cost to develop a new site with electricity and
the electrical cost is the biggest. You know, there's things that could bring people into the park. One would be creating more sites with water and then sewer hookup too. People like full hookups if they're staying long term, and I mean, I do some camping too, and it is handier to have. You don't have to dump your tank when you're done. It's all set up. But there's provisions to do full hookups. I think you're probably money ahead, personally, in my opinion, doing something like that versus adding more sites until.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, just something to think about for the future.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting the sites that are there would just add convenience of full hookups?
Yeah, and I did have them add provisions when they put the new sewer line out to the ponds, because that goes right through the edge of Swift Lake. We already have our bathhouse and the current dump station hooked to it. They put another connection so they could develop some of those sites. You could actually, there's enough sewer there to do all sewer if you wanted to, and then water, there's a 2-inch water line out there too, so there's probably plenty to do it. I'm not sure what the Department of Health requires for the water line sizing as far as that goes. It would have to go through plan review for the water and sewer, but it is an option and there is provisions there for it. So.
How many are not water sewer out there?
There is no sewer and there's 5 water. And the water sites are actually the shortest sites there because they were kind of the first ones developed as the park was built, and one has like an electrical panel in it, so it's good for like a pop-up camper, but you wouldn't get a travel trailer or fifth wheel or RV in there. It's just a short van style, but
I don't know. I would maybe say when you have time over the winter, because you always have plenty in the winter. Maybe just figure out maybe what the cost would be to run a water line and electrical to another site.
yeah, the electrical,
Just to know.
I would say a couple thousand a site is going to be real close. I think we refed those 3 sites with a 50 amp. Because there's 3 sites that we added one after the new sewer line was ran, because we got rid of the metering station out there, which gave us 2 more sites, and then another site that was kind of half developed. There's some evergreen trees there. So those 3 sites we added, and then those we have 50 amp service to all of those, and ended up being like $7,000 or $8,000. But we also put a light pole in on the way by too, so there's a little additional cost there. But just to give you a ballpark figure.
Any other questions for me?
I just want to compliment you, Krista, and your staff for your work you did on these delinquent water accounts and setting up payment plans and working with UCAP. It's not easy working with accounts receivable, and I just think you've done a tremendous job here and not having any shut-offs for September. That's great.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to Krista because it was really all her.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Very good.
Thanks, Kristen.
Ready for me, Mayor?
I am.
I just want to note that Jeff's sick tonight and Tam's not here either, but I certainly, you have their reports and information, and everybody's working hard. I just on my city administrator report, I put kind of the work plan in front of you. A lot of the stuff you know, but I do want to highlight a few things. Kind of on the second page. We did hire, and Jeff and I are working on this together, but ultimately for this EDA grant we got to do the consulting for, kind of the online consulting for businesses in town. We originally had 19 qualified companies submit applications, then we had another one come in after the deadline, and so, since we had one slot, we added that one. So we've got a full 20 businesses in town. They're going to start receiving services. The meeting for that, there's a meeting tomorrow night, and I think most of them have committed to come to kind of kick off the program. And we've hired 2 people to provide the services. One of them is Mark Seeger, who you know, and he built his business in town online, and so he kind of has that practical experience. We hired another person, Doria Drost, who is just fresh out of SMSU, where she got her MBA, but she's the marketing director at the Slayton Hospital, and so and built their website and has quite a bit of experience doing that too. And so both of them working together, I think it's going to be a pretty good. And they both live here in Tracy, just so you know. So we hired Tracy people to do this work too, and so we're pretty excited to get this kicked off to help some businesses in town. So that'll be starting here real quick. Further down on the second page under airport runway maintenance, I think Shane may have said this before, but I just want to point out that we originally had intended that this maintenance would happen in the fall. It looks like it's going to be delayed to the spring because of weather-related concerns that MnDOT has. From their perspective, it's still within their fiscal year, so they don't care if it's in the spring or the fall, but that's 100% grant funded with federal money, so it doesn't affect our budget either. We'll modify our budget next year ultimately, but it's like I said, it's 100% funded, so it doesn't cost us anything. To the last page, under park maintenance, that very top thing. This is something that's kind of popped up in the last week or two that Shane and I have put together. We were approached by Carl Campbell at the school about a project for his students. After looking at, Shane and I had gone back and forth on this, and we felt that kind of a project for students, like rebuilding one of our shelters that are 50 years old, would make a lot of sense. And we were trying to determine which one we would like to do, because the park board has kind of said that they believe that Central Park should be their focus. We thought, well, why don't we do that? So we're going to rebuild the shelter from 1968 at the on the same model as the one that's at Sebastian Park by the pool, so it'll look like that one, with labor from the school. I was also approached by someone about a potential donation for that, so even though it's going to cost us some materials costs, we think we'll get a donation as well, for this, and I haven't worked out all the details on that, but you can see that it's kind of already marked out. We're going to build it adjacent to the one that's current, and then next spring we'll tear the old one down rather than trying to tear the one down first, because it's just easier to do with the weather and everything at this point. But that's going to start a little bit later. Well, it's kind of actually already started, so you'll see that.
Is there electrical?
There is electrical there. We're going to have to run a new electrical line. One of the things that Shane has said is that there probably isn't enough amp service in the park in general, And so we're looking at upsizing that, but yeah, there'll be electrical that will run to it. It doesn't have to go very far though, because there's electrical right to the bathroom, right there.
But we will look at additional, I guess.
Yeah, we have. We've talked about it already with the park committee, and we need to upsize the electrical in the park, for sure. But that's not something that's something we've talked about. It's gonna happen. I just don't know under what circumstance yet. Not this year, but it's probably next year.
Which park is this that they're doing this in?
Central Park.
Okay.
Central Park. So you can see, well, I drove out there today, and you can see where it's gonna be, because it's marked out on the ground, just right next to where the current shelter is. So we'll have a brand.
Will it be bigger? Excuse me, will it be bigger?
It'll be 20 by 40. It'll be the same size, but it's gonna be taller, because you go in that one right now, and it's really short, and it has kind of those, angled sides, and this one will be a little easier to get in and out of.
It'll be just like Sebastian.
It'll be just like Sebastian.
Same
Yeah,
size.
same size. Yep.
Just a little bit shorter
Oh, it is a little bit shorter?
in height.
Oh, in height, yes. But as far as, it's 20 by 40, it's the same area, I
I
guess you
didn't
could
think it
say.
needed 10-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
Much shorter.
So just so you was like, what are they building out there? That's what's going on. The next thing is related to that. Two things down, talking about the park board. I kind of already mentioned it. There's been and Councilmember Schmidt also mentioned it earlier, that there's a lot of interest from this group about what we can do, and they really felt that kind of focusing, was important, because there's needs all over the city, but if you make an impact, in a more specific area and focusing, they've kind of made the strategic decision that they want to focus on Central Park. They also have decided, we need some kind of plan for what Central Park is going to be. There's a lot going on there, and so we're going to have some further discussions about that, and you'll probably, hear more from them about that. But ultimately, those are kind of the two big picture things that they've decided at this point, and so we're working with them now to try to figure out what that means, and eventually we'll bring that back to City Council. But all of those things, related to beautification. So we talked a little bit about the structures and buildings, but we really have focused a little bit more on our parks. And now that we have kind of fixed up the streets, I asked Shane to really focus on this going into the fall before the snow flies, so we can do as much as we can on that.
I think that's great that the school's doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a great program. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good stuff, when you can do community collaboration like that. It makes a lot of sense. I know the Lions are working on some other projects too. They have a shelter out there on by the horseshoes. I call it the Horseshoe Park. I guess it's Nels Park. But talking about either moving that, but ultimately fixing that concrete pad that's underneath, because it's all broken up. And so community stuff like that's really good. That's all I have, Mayor, unless you have any other questions.
I don't have anybody else have?
See, could I ask a question? I know the finances on the swimming pool was included in Jeff's report.
Yeah.
Okay, and the good news kind of is the revenues were up about 28%.
Yep.
And we ended up with a deficit of about 80,000.
We had a lot of maintenance and repair at the pool this summer, and it was like $40-some thousand.
Yeah, I see.
And it's the pump, and we already had budgeted, carried over 20,000, for the heater, and then we had some other things break. So I think that's what happened when you had to have it sit for a year, but it was a lot worse. I shouldn't say worse. There was a lot more going on than we've had in past years. Yeah.
But I think people in the community will be happy, not happy, but will be pleasantly surprised that, yes, we still lost money.
Yeah.
It's not made to be a moneymaker.
No, it's not.
But we're not losing as much as we've had in the past.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good
I mean, I'm
point.
thinking that's what.
Yeah, that's
And it's
why I
being well
mentioned
used.
that.
It's
Yeah.
being well used. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, based on the survey information we've gotten, it is one of the most, almost 80% of the people in town, in the survey that we asked them, had said they'd been to the aquatic center at least once. So, I mean, it's well used, absolutely.
Yeah,
People
no.
of all ages, well used.
Yeah, no question. I'm a big booster of the aquatic center, and I use it a lot myself, and I know a lot of other people that do. But I would be interested in some more figures of knowing how many actual users we have, how many people are using that pool every day, and how many are from out of town. I think those numbers would be interesting. And I also still think that in today's world, the admission of $6 is low. When you look at what else $6 will buy in this day and age, and what health costs compared to when the pool opened, I think we've increased admission rates $1 in 20 years. And I just think that there's some things that we need to look at down the road. I do think that in some categories that we can afford to bump up our fees. I know that the $50 season pass that I pay and many others pay for an individual resident is really low. And I just think that it's a very nice pool, and I think a lot of people are willing to help support it.
Your point is well taken, council member. We are actively looking at that right now in terms of fees and what makes sense. And I know that we had proposed some fee increases, for 2020, 22 at the pool. But we would be happy to bring that information back to you, as well as we could kind of show what other people are charging too. And so we can have that discussion, absolutely. Yep.
But a great year at the pool, and thanks to everyone who runs it. It's something that our community can really be proud of.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Ready to move on to
We can, if you're ready.
new business, if everybody's ready? Yep.
The first item, Mayor, is the preliminary budget tax levy. So Krista and I are going to tag team this. I'm going to kind of do the introduction and the conclusion, and then Krista will do the meat of it in the middle. So I'll set it up first, and I'm going to move this over to here so that we can operate the computer at the same time on the screen, so that the people at home can see this as well as you. So, as you know, we have to adopt the preliminary tax levy and the budget by the end of September. We have to certify that information to the county by the 30th, which would be Thursday, and Diane will do that probably tomorrow, I would guess. That's primarily the exercise, is really to satisfy to do the tax levy, but ultimately we use this as an opportunity to discuss what your goals are. And so we think about the budget as a strategic planning tool. What are your priorities? How do we link what you want to accomplish in the community to what the budget is? The perfect example of that, I already used it tonight, is the street maintenance, right? I mean, last year we said we need to put more money into streets. We found a place to do it. We put it in the budget. The streets are in better shape. And that's the way it should work. And that's what we're trying to do. We really felt that this was a budget that was to attempt to try to maximize of our community investments as much as possible. The more that we can put back into our community, the better tax dollars are spent, I think. And we tried to incorporate some best practices into this budget. This is grounded in your goals, the 5 goals that you have as a city council. We have an affordable 5-year capital improvement plan at this point. Under certain conditions, every year we'll reevaluate it with a budget, but it's not just a wish list. If things happen the way we're projecting to happen, you know, we can accomplish that plan. All of your funds are balanced. So the water fund is not losing money like it has been in previous years, you know. So every fund that we have is making money. And in the cases of the liquor store fund, for example, we're doing really, really well, actually. We're going to go, if we're successful this year like I think we are with the liquor store, we used to be under the statewide standard for municipal stores for bottom line revenue, bottom line income. This year and next year will be above the standard. 8% is normally what people look to make, and we're approaching over 10 at this point, bottom line, and that's really good. We wanted to make sure that the tax levy increases, which is 7% on just the city portion of their taxes, is dedicated to capital improvements. So you know you're getting something for that money. It's not just, you know, being spent on, you know, pencils for us or something. We wanted to maintain your service level, so continue to provide the same services that we always do. And we needed to contain some costs in operations, and we believe we've done all those things in this budget. We've already had several meetings about this as a city council, so I know, of course, that some of this might be redundant for you, but you know, I think it's important also to kind of outline these things for the public record and for the people so that they can hear it, as well as the newspaper who's going to write a story about it this week. And with that, I'm going to call up Krista to kind of go through, you know, the meat of what we have in this budget.
So like Eric said, a lot of this, the council has already seen. We reviewed these numbers last Wednesday. Nothing's changed since last week. So we are projecting expenditures to be about 14.6 million in 2022, with revenues being just over 10 million. The property tax levy increase of 7% in 2022 will be 100% used for capital projects. It's about $90,000. We included the 3% water fee increase, the 8% sewer fee increase, and then the storm sewer increase of 25 cents per month per the resolution from the end of 2020. Local government aid was right where we expected it to be for 2022 at about $970,000 for the year. We were able to find about 2.5% decrease in operational expenses compared to 21, mostly based on our new chart of accounts and really fine-tuning exactly where budget numbers need to be, as well as better budget controls. Department heads are monitoring their budgets more closely than they ever have before. And then per our union contract, we will see a 2.5% COLA for all employees starting 1/1 of 22. Just some highlights on the consolidated budget. Our expense priorities, over half of our expenditures are in capital outlay due to the Phase 3 street project. Excuse me. For expenses, we always pay our debt first, then our operational expenses, followed by capital projects with whatever's left after the first two are taken care of. We will see our debt service decline in 2022 a little bit, which just allows us to take care of some more of those capital improvement projects with that extra money, but they will begin rising again in 23. Again, 2022 is really heavy for capital projects because of the street project and wrapping up most of that in 22, excuse me. And we are, again, operational costs are expected to decline because of our new chart of accounts and just better tracking and better management of our costs. Quick outline of our debt service. The 2016 B bonds will retire in 2022, so that's where we'll see the decrease in our debt service next year. But then we'll see a significant increase in 23 after we refinance the 2019 temporary bond for the Phase 3A street projects, which is about $8.4 million. And then we'll again see a decline in 2026 as we retire more bonds at that time. Any questions so far? Stop me if you have any as I roll through this.
Are you at all concerned about the possibility of increased interest rates when these the temporary bond is refinanced, or does it look pretty stable?
It's set.
Is it set?
It's already
What
preset.
interest rate is that? Okay.
Yeah, it's 2.4%, I believe, and it's a long-term rural development loan from the federal government, and it was set when we issued the bonds in 2019. So we know exactly what it is.
That's right, okay.
No risk there at all.
Yep, thank you.
So as Eric already mentioned, services are expected to remain the same in 2022. We were able to reduce our supplies and services and charges by 2.5%. Again, just better management of our budget and more accurate line items with our new chart of accounts and new financial system has allowed us to manage that better. We will be moving Val from 32 to 40 hours a week. That extra 8 hours will be focused on grant writing for us, for the city. And we will continue the work plan that Eric's outlined to meet the goals that the council has established. This next slide is just a breakdown of expenditures by department. So Public Works holds about 50% of the overall expenditures. A lot of that is, well, most of that is because of the Phase 3 street project. A lot of those expenditures fall into Public Works. And then admin and finance is also a large chunk, about a third. That category includes our general debt payments and then the deputy registrar costs, which come out to be about $1 million a year. So it's pretty significant, but offset by the revenue we collect in the deputy registrar office. And then capital improvements, similar to what we discussed last Wednesday. The first section are the funded projects for the next 5 years, just over $900,000. This list is based off of the staff and council priorities that we reviewed earlier this year. For 2022, we have $286,000 in projects earmarked. The second section on the bottom are maintenance projects. Those will be funded through the maintenance, repairs and maintenance line items in these funds. For 2022, we're looking at about $106,000. A good chunk of that is the street maintenance of $88,000 that will be funded from the sewer fund. And then probably about $17,000 in repairs that we know about right now at the aquatic center. These next two, the first section is the cost for the Phase 3 street project. That's really just wrapping up the rest of the project, focusing on the pond decommissioning and then the Center Street improvements, which Lyon County will be kicking in some money for that. It's approximately $1.8 million. Is that what I remember? Okay. And then that last piece, the SCADA system for $130,000 is fully funded by the ARPA money that we were receiving from the federal government. We received a portion of that this year, and we'll receive the rest of that next year.
What does the ARPA stand for again, please?
American Recovery Act. Yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
I just had a brain fart on that one, sorry.
The Center Street project, do we have to put out the bids and all that, or does the county take care of that?
We're going to do it because Kyle, from ISG is going to do all the engineering. And so basically we're going to design the street and put it all together. In fact, I think he's going to be out surveying that relatively soon here this fall to kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. But we're going to do that, and then they'll pay us back. That's what it amounts to.
All right. So how are capital improvements going to be paid for in 2022? So again, the SCADA project will be paid for with ARPA funds. The Phase 3 project includes grants and existing bonds, and then the 1.8 million from the county. We will have 88,000 in street maintenance that will come from the sewer fund. And then the general fund capital projects, that 286,000 is made up of about 90,000 in the tax levy, which is the 7% increase, $93,000 in existing capital fund balance, 58,000 in additional ARPA money, $30,000 in carryover project money for Central Park, and then a $15,000 from the 2021 budget savings. So we will see some budget savings in 2021. Then we will also have 138,000 reserved for the community center that we will keep in the capital fund. We did also receive a $500 donation to the community center last week. So we will add that to that 138.5. We'll hold about 139,000 for that.
The county's gonna put in 1.8. What if the project comes in way under or way over? Do they pay more, or are we
I don't know
just
the
stuck
details
with the
on that
over?
one yet.
That's a good question. I mean, that's something we're going to have to work out in the contract. We're throwing out 1.8 right now based on some engineer's estimate. When Kyle does more of the full engineering for the project, we'll have a better idea. The second thing that we need to know of for sure is what the pond decommissioning hasn't been bid yet either. That's going to drive a lot of this, because then we'll know exactly how much money we have left. So that's up in the air. They've pledged 1.8 million. So I'm sure they're hoping that it's going to be less. But you know, we're going to have to figure out how to make that work most likely. But if it really overruns, we can probably beg for more. I know they have more than that in the fund. It's really state. It's really state of Minnesota. Oh gosh, what are they called? There's a specific pot of money that's basically state of Minnesota transportation money, where this is coming from, that's paying for this. Ultimately, it's funneled through the counties.
State aid highway?
Yes, that's what it is. Thank you. I couldn't remember the exact. That's what it is. That's really what the money is. Thank you.
So
That's
how
why I got to
far
have a historian around so we know these things.
How far is Center Street, starting at 14 and going to where?
South Street.
Okay.
So when you go past the railroad tracks all the way to Pine, that's not part of the project.
Is that county yet or city?
That's county. Yeah, that's why they're going to kick in the money, because it's a county road.
No, I meant past the railroad.
Oh,
track.
that's still in the county. Yeah,
Okay.
but that's all they'll fund at this point. Yep. And we're looking at other things, you know, other potential pots of money as well. But you know, we'll just have to see, you know, where that goes. This is a little bit of a fluid situation, but this is what we believe at this point in time.
All right. With that, back to Eric.
So this last kind of conclusion or slide is basically just kind of the budget takeaways, you know, for you as well as the public. Just to remind you that your stated mission, stated mission, is that the City of Tracy provides high quality, efficient, and professional services to the public we serve. We strive to involve the public and grow our community with a fiscally responsible government. So we really kind of had that in mind when we put a lot of these things together. We really believe that this budget maintains services while containing some costs through better budget tracking and efficiencies. You know, in reality, we think we've already saved money. For the money that we spent on buying the new software, we think we've already saved that in budget savings just this year, you know, in better tracking in and of itself. So that ended up being, you know, we believe, an investment. We're going to support the growth through some very significant community investments. $7.7 million is a lot of money, you know, to put into a community of this size to improve its infrastructure. And so I think you should be proud of that. We're going to be engaging the community a lot more. You've actually appointed, we've got 3 different citizen committees going right now. The new park board, we've got a comprehensive plan committee, and we've got We've got the community center work group. I mean, those are all new citizen-centered boards that we haven't had in the past. Doing more community events. We're going to add another movie in the park next year, so we're going to do 3. We're looking at, I think we're doing another movie. We're going to do one inside, actually, in the VMC in December. And so we want to do more of those kinds of events and support those kinds of things. And we're doing this all with a budget that's structurally balanced and fiscally responsible. You know, if you look at the consolidated income statement that Krista put out earlier, we will see a decrease in fund balance, which means we're going to be dipping into our savings, but that's because we're spending the money on street maintenance out of the sewer fund. If you don't do that, you know, we're basically bringing in the same amount of money that we're spending. A lot of that is the use of the existing bonds for the street project, but ultimately what you've got here is a balanced budget. So we're doing a lot in this budget for a balanced budget. It really is a lot for the community, so you should be proud of what we're doing here. With that, we would ask you to adopt the resolution which adopts the preliminary budget and certifies the preliminary tax levy to the county. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll get started then.
All right.
A motion to approve resolution 2021-87 for the approval of the 2022 preliminary budget and tax levy.
Second that motion.
First and second, do we have any further discussion?
Well, I think that it's a good framework for a spending plan for next year. We've got a couple of months now that we can go over it and fine tune it, and I mean it basically sets the parameters for our spending for next year. You know, nothing's written in stone at this point until we finalize it in December, but I like how it's been set up. I think it's reasonable. I think it's a good starting point for us, so I would support passing this preliminary levy and budget.
Okay, with that, can we have roll call, please?
Howell?
Aye.
Van Dyke.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Teagues.
Aye.
Schmidt.
I
Mayor Corman.
Thank you. The next 3 items are all related. Shane's going to come up and talk about these. This is the AWAS project, which is happening at the airport. And we have 3 different resolutions associated with this project because they're all kind of separate, different actions. And I'll let Shane go through it.
Which one was the first one? The first resolution to accept and quote an award agreement to Dale Johnson Construction for the AWAS at the airport. We had a few bids come in. Dale Johnson Construction came in at $78,745. The next one was Warner Brothers Electric at $80,000, and then Neo Electrical Solutions was $90,925, and then Parsons Electric was $189,590. This is just a portion of the AWAS system. As far as this resolution, just need approval for to accept the quote so they can get that part of the project done. Do you have any questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-88 to accept the quote from Dale Johnson Construction.
I'll second that motion.
First and second, any further discussion? I'm going to add something to this because Corman Contracting is a sub to a sub of Dale's from what I hear. So I'm going to abstain from voting on all 3 of these. With that, can we have roll call?
Landay,
Aye.
Teagues,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Tell,
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Okay, the next resolution, 983 is 2021-89. That's change order number 1 for the AWAS project. Right after the quotes were solicited for this project, the state decided they could combine the freezing rain sensor into another piece of equipment that's already being installed on a different foundation. So with that, we had a deduct of $57.29 even. What it amounts to was a foundation and some conduit was removed. So that would bring it to a total of $73,016 even. There was a discrepancy that I found after it was actually I think in the actual change order document. 2 numbers were transposed. Instead of 745, it ended up being 754. The correct amount was 78,745, which threw it off by a few dollars on that. So the total amount with the change order would be $73,016 even for that. So we just need approval for that change order, which is the deduct of $5,729.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-89 for the change order.
I'll second.
First and second, do we have any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Teagues,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Tell,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Landay.
Aye.
All right, so the last portion, 2021-90 is accepting the grant agreement for the airport AWAS project. Now that the quotes came in favorable to close to what the engineer estimate was on this project. So if you have any questions on that.
Is this all hopefully this year that they're gonna get it
Yeah.
done yet? Okay.
The only thing that's really going to throw a wrench in it is if we run into winter conditions, so if we run into a lot of frost or snow, where it could muck up the ground a little bit, XL is going to charge another $10,000 to $12,000 for their installation of the project. So there's another portion. There's different pieces to the AWAS project itself, but one of the portions of that's not included in Dale's quote was running a primary service line out to the location and setting a transformer. That's through XL Energy. If they run into winter conditions, they charge another $10,000 to $12,000 to run that wire. It's 1,800 feet that they have to run the wire from the current transformer to the additional transformer. So.
We'll tell them to start now.
I was gonna say, who's in control with the timeline then to get them here?
Well, the application's been made, and now once the quote's accepted, then the electrician will work on getting everything put in so they can do their part of it too. So, sound like they're a month out, but generally the end of October you don't really run into. It's pretty low risk. Get into November, it could be hit or miss as far as winter conditions. So
we'll get on their list, like.
So yeah, I did the application last week. Now that, so the ball's rolling on that. We're a week ahead of time. So they're a good 30 days out when I talked to them last week. So any other questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-90 to accept the grant agreement.
I'll second that.
With the first and second, do we have any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Landay,
Aye.
Tell,
Aye.
Teagues,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Mayor Carmen.
I think you can, because it's not about the expenditure, it's just about accepting the money. I think you're okay on this one.
Aye.
Yeah.
With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Is anybody ever opposed?
Thank you. We had the wrong names up?
Right there.
Who was anonymous tonight?
Yeah. Your name?
Hey, Pear,
Yes.
what's the job in that paper?
Oh,
Tell Pear.
I got everyone confused.
Did you guys adjourn already?